I finally sat back down next to Abby and I was holding her hand, and my spitfire of a daughter, I think it was about between 6 and 7 hours later, after toying with it back and forth. She hates holding hands. Kid despises holding hands like this. Just despises it. She never has liked it. And I don't know why, but every time I tried to hold her hand like that, she would go like this. And so I was sitting there and holding her hand. And the nurse she came in and she says, I'm going to start drawing some blood. We're just going to blood type her and do some matches and just find out if her blood's clean and, no infections or anything like that. And I said, okay. And they already had central lines and stuff because she was on the vent and everything. And they weren't going to poke her or anything. They were just going to pull from that. And I said that was fine. So she walked over and she had her stuff laid out. And Abby was just laying there and I was telling her I loved her and everything. And I was holding her hand. My hand was on the bed. Martha was leaning up against the sink. I think Jean was over in the chair talking to Mark. And we were just sitting there and the room was real quiet. And I swear I felt, again, a small rub. And I looked at Martha and I said, did you see that? Martha said, no, honey. And the nurse says, honey, she's just twitching. It's normal. And I said, and I got a little upset and I said, damn it, that's not twitching. And I got frustrated and I yanked away and I stood up and I walked out of the room again. And at that point, I got up and I went to the bathroom and I sat on the bathroom floor and I literally cried. I bawled my eyes out in the women's bathroom up by her room. And I came back out and of course the chaplain was standing right by the door. And he gave me a little hug and I cried some more right by the door. And there was this nice woman whose son was up there, little guy. And she was going through hell herself. And she showed compassion to me and brought me a box of Kleenexes. And I'll never forget her for bringing me that box of Kleenexes. And I ended up drying up my face, and the chaplain and I talked, and he said, if you feel this way, he said, you need to do what you need to do. And I said, yeah, I know. And I walked back into the room. I sat back down and I grabbed Abby's hand and I just looked at her and I said, baby, if you're in there and if you can hear me, I said, just let me know. And within a few minutes after that, I was sitting there and then all of a sudden, her hand just slightly went like that. And she grasped my fingers and she intertwined. And at that point, it scared me, it startled me, so I yanked away. And I looked over at Martha and I said, did you see that? And Martha looked at me and she said, yes, I did. And the nurse, and Martha said to the nurse, did you see that? And the nurse said, no. And I said, watch. And I put my hand back like this. And I said, Abigail, I said, this is Mama. I said, if you can hear me, I said, honey, I said, do that again. I said, I love you. And sure enough, she intertwined her fingers and she did that again. And that time she squeezed me. And that was the end of it right there. They were calling in the doctors. The nurse hit the button and Dr. Sharon came in and they checked her pupils and her eyes were tracking you and she was moving. And at that point, she started smacking my hand and Jean got up and got beside her and he was asking her questions and she was trying to answer us, wasn't she, honey? And she actually got a little agitated. I think she was getting a little upset and because she was trying to ask about Barb at that point. She was smacking my hand and she was trying to draw the letter B in the palm. And Jean was asking her, he said, are you trying to ask something, a question? And she was smacking my hand and nodding her head. And Dr. Sharon asked her, she said, Abigail, if you can hear me, will you give me something, a squeeze or something? So she squeezed her hand. And it was at that point they took her down for another scan. And she was out the room in no time. They scanned her head and came back and said that the bullet shattered the right side of her skull, and because it did, it gave room for swelling. And because of that swelling, it helped save her life.